billion recently is an increase of more than 50% over last year. The IPO market is also vibrant. Enterprises are increasingly confident about Hong Kong's financial prospects. Last year, funds raised from new listings amounted to $88 billion, a year-on-year increase of about 90%, ranking fourth in the world. To further assist the specialist technology and biotech companies in raising funds and expanding business, the Hong Kong Stock Exchange is working actively to set up a dedicated technology enterprises channel to help companies prepare for their listing applications. The SFC, Securities and Futures Commission, will offer support to ensure a smooth application process. In the meantime, we'll review the listing requirements and the post-listing obligations. We'll also review the market structure. This includes exploring the setting up of a post-delisting over-the-counter trading mechanism. The second theme is about wealth and asset management. Investment and financing are two sides of the same coin. I was talking about financing. Now I'm going to talk about investment. Hong Kong is a treasure trove for attracting wealth. It is Asia's largest hedge fund center and the second largest center for private equity management after the mainland. There are more than 470 open-ended fund companies in Hong Kong, double that of a year ago. There are also over 1,050 registered limited partnership funds, representing a year-on-year increase of about 40%. Within this year, we will formulate proposals on the preferential tax regimes for funds, single-family offices and carried interest. We'll expand the scope of fund under the tax exemption regime, increase the types of qualifying transactions eligible for tax concessions for funds and single-family offices, and enhance the tax concession arrangement on the distribution of carried interest by private equity funds. We'll consult the industry this year and submit the proposals to the Legislative Council for scrutiny next year. Our goal is to secure the Council's approval of the proposals so that the relevant measures can take effect from 2025 and 26 onwards. Separately, the Invest Hong Kong has helped over 160 family offices set up operations or expand their businesses in Hong Kong. We will soon be hosting the third edition of the Wealth for Good in Hong Kong Summit under the theme Hong Kong of the World for the World, to showcase Hong Kong's strength as a global hub for family offices. The third theme, it's about fintech and promoting innovation. Fintech is the future trend. We are at the forefront in this area. We are actively developing a virtual asset ecosystem. The government will soon promulgate the second policy statement on the development of virtual assets to explore the integration of traditional financial services and virtual assets. We will, within this year, conduct consultation on the licensing regimes of virtual asset over-the-counter trading services and custodian services. In respect of the gold and commodities markets, the government has set up a working group with plans to upgrade the storage facilities and trading mechanism. The London Metal Exchange, a subsidiary of the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, has included Hong Kong as its approved delivery point. This helps strengthen our position in the market. In addition, non-traditional risk transfer tools such as insurance-linked securities are developing steadily. To date, we have facilitated the issuance of 6 catastrophe bonds in Hong Kong, with issuance amount totaling over $5.8 billion. We'll extend the pilot insurance-linked securities grant scheme for 3 years. The FSTB, together with OASIS, the Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises, as well as the Trade Development Council, will host the inaugural Hong Kong Global Financial and Industry Summit this year. Through financial empowerment, we'll attract more leading companies in the advanced industries, domestic and overseas enterprises and investors to establish presence in Hong Kong. On fixed income and the currency market, the SFC and the Hong Kong Monetary Authority have set up a task force to formulate a roadmap. We'll organize a flagship forum in the second half of this year to promote Hong Kong's strengths in this regard. The fourth theme is about mutual market access and deepening international cooperation. Hong Kong's status as an international financial center hinges on its connectivity with the mainland and the world. We'll enhance the mutual market access mechanism. We'll study the expansion of the cross-boundary wealth management connect in the Greater Bay Area. The two places are now conducting technical preparations at full speed to implement the inclusion of RMB trading counter and the southbound trading of Stock Connect. In addition, the stock exchange is taking forward a single tranche multiple counter arrangement to enhance settlement efficiency. Offshore RMB business here is also growing, with the liquidity pool expanded to about 1.1 trillion yuan. The government regularly issues RMB bonds of different tenors to promote the formation of the offshore RMB yield curve. In the meantime, the stock exchange will step up its promotional efforts in ASEAN and the Middle East to attract more enterprises to list in Hong Kong and explore cooperation with them in the area of exchange-traded funds to promote two-way capital flows. The fifth major theme is about institutional reform. To ensure market stability and efficiency, to reform our systems. The stock exchange is upgrading its post-trade system, which will be made compatible with the T+1 settlement cycle by the end of this year. The stock exchange will also put forward proposals to improve the trading unit system, commonly known as the board lot system, within this year. To meet investors' risk management needs, the SFC will consult the market on the proposal to increase the position limits for key index derivatives so as to enhance flexibility for investors to use the relevant derivatives while safeguarding financial safety. This year, the Mandatory Provident Fund Schemes Authority will consult the public on specific proposals of MPF full portability and submit recommendations to the government so that MPF full portability can be launched soon after the full implementation of the eMPF platform. In conclusion, through the policies in stock market development, wealth management, fintech, mutual market access, and institutional reform, Hong Kong is reinforcing its position as an international financial center. We are confident that with institutional innovation and international cooperation, Hong Kong will continue to shine in the global financial arena and inject impetus to the local economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hui. I'll now give the floor to Professor Sun to talk about the measures on the ITIB. Thank you. Good afternoon, Hong Kong citizens and friends of the media. Taking into account the 4 development directions laid down in the Hong Kong INT Development Blueprint, the budget this year put forward a number of important measures for supporting the development of INT and expediting that of new quality productive forces. I'm going to introduce these measures. First of all, we will continue to enhance the INT ecosystem. A robust INT ecosystem helps us to attract talents within. The blueprint set out the 3 major areas of technology that we should focus on developing. The budget this year emphasizes that AI, artificial intelligence, is an area and a core industry we should focus on developing. As mentioned in the budget, $1 billion have been set aside for setting up the AI Research and Development Institute to steer and empower Hong Kong's innovative R&D as well as industry application of AI. The Digital Policy Office will make concrete arrangements. Phase 1 facilities of Cyberport's AI Supercomputing Center came into service at the end of last year. The 3 billion AI subsidy scheme has approved 5 R&D projects. In relation to promoting industry development, last year we already enhanced the new industrialization funding scheme and launched the new industrialization acceleration scheme. The first project has already been approved under this scheme. In order to channel market capital into emerging and future industries, we are preparing for the setting up of the 10 billion Innovation and Technology Industry-Oriented Fund. We aim to invite relevant organizations to submit expressions of interest, and we seek funding approval from LegCo in the middle of this year. We will launch the pilot manufacturing and production line upgrade support scheme this year, which provides funding of up to $250,000 on a 1-to-2 matching basis to enterprises operating production lines in Hong Kong. We are also preparing to launch the pilot INT accelerator scheme. We want to attract experienced professional startups from overseas to set up accelerators headquarters in Hong Kong. Each of these institutions will receive matching subsidies of up to $30 million. We are also working with the Hong Kong Science and Technology Parks Corporation to look into the life and health technology industry's demand for manufacturing facilities that comply with the good manufacturing practices. R&D is a very important element in developing INT. We will invite institutions to submit expressions of interest in relation to Inno Hong Kong platform. And the two pilot lines of the Hong Kong Microelectronics Research and Development Institute will be set up at the Microelectronics Center in Yuen Long this year. It will start operating next year. We are also inviting proposals from institutions to submit the proposals in relation to subsidy scheme for the setup of Life and Health Technology Research Institute. In order to R&D of aerospace technology, we established the Hong Kong Space Robotics and Energy Center under the Inno Hong Kong Research Clusters. The aim is to develop a robot which will contribute to the Chang'e 8 mission. To develop INT, we need to provide sufficient space to create capacity. Hong Kong Park of the Hetao Shenzhen Hong Kong Science and Technology Innovation Cooperation Zone and Sentin Technopole provide a total of 300 hectares of new sites to support the development of INT industries. Hong Kong Park will enter the operation stage this year. The first batch of tenants will move in within this year. $3.7 billion have been earmarked for speeding up the completion of the infrastructures and public facilities in Phase 1 of the Hong Kong Park. We will identify suitable land parcels and invite private development proposals to expedite the development by leveraging market forces. We will continue to liaise with mainland authorities to explore new policies to facilitate cross-boundary flow of innovation talents. ITIP is conducting a study on the development plan and layout of a new INT site of 210 hectares near Sentin Technopole. We will announce the findings of the study this year. 20 hectares of the site will be given to Hong Kong STPC for development and operation starting from 2026 to 2027. As for the 10-hectare site in the data facility cluster of Sandy Ridge, the rezoning procedures are expected to be completed in the middle of this year. We are preparing for land proposals. On promoting digital economy and smart city development, we strive to improve the efficiency of public services by leveraging technology, including the promotion of single portal for online government services through IM-Smart. This enables the public to access information, apply for services, and settle bill payments on a one-stop portal. The DPO will progressively launch Corp ID, facilitating the digital transformation of enterprises and improving the efficiency of handling online applications by departments. The exchange of innovation elements between the mainland and Hong Kong is key to our INT development. On data flow and exchange, standard contract within the GBA is open to all industries for participation. This is conducive to the safe and orderly cross-boundary flow of personal information within the GBA. Cyberport is actively working with the authority of Tianhai to recommend the landing of suitable startups in the two parks. Budget brought a piece of good news. The Shenzhen Hong Kong Guangzhou cluster ranked second globally for the 5th consecutive year in the Global Innovation Index published by WIPO. With our country's strong support, the publication event for the top 100 S&T clusters in the WIPO Global Innovation Index 2025 will be held in Hong Kong. We will stay committed to driving the development of INT and taking forward the development of new quality productive forces. I appeal to different quarters of society to support our work. Let's combine forces to promote INT development in Hong Kong. Thank you. Our PC is on two policy portfolios. Please identify your media outlet when you ask questions, and please also state which bureau you would like to ask.
Yes, on my left. I'm from RTHK. I have a question about INT for Professor Sun. On the AI Research and Development Institute, $1 billion are set aside for that. Is there a timeline for that? And which areas will the institute focus on? In terms of $1 billion that will be spent, how does it compare with the amount spent in the mainland? Some LegCo members said DeepSeek should be used in Hong Kong. Does the SAR government have any thoughts about that? On the Hetao cooperation zone, Mr. Xia Baowen said we have to make breakthroughs. Does Professor Sun Dong have any thoughts about how to speed up the development of the Hong Kong Park of the Hetao zone? Thank you for your questions. On the AI Research and Development Institute, it is a response to the initiative of AI Plus of our country. It is to build a digital industry cluster. AI is leading a new wave of revolution and reform. It will deeply change people's lives as well as the development of different industries. Over the past few years, in terms of AI, the government has attached a lot of importance to it, and we have also devoted a lot of resources in developing AI. After careful consideration, we think that it is necessary for us to consolidate resources to build such a research institute. We have a few goals. First, we have to advance development. In the coming decades, AI will develop by leaps and bounds. Therefore, we have to strengthen our effort in this regard. We have to consolidate the resources as well as results we have in Hong Kong. Another mission that we have is to promote the use of AI in all sectors, including legal sector, healthcare sector, as well as the INT sector, so on. Also, we have to promote the development of the AI sector. AI has been applied in Hong Kong in different areas. However, still there is a gap between us as well as other places. So there is room for us to improve. Mainland enterprises are performing very well in this regard. The application of AI is proposed by a lot of enterprises in the mainland. So we should follow suit in Hong Kong. Our plan is that by the middle of this year, we can secure the approval of the Legislative Council so that next year, the AI Research and Development Institute can start operating next year. We have the Inno Hong Kong now. Over the past year, it has achieved very good results. Our work is to consolidate or integrate Inno Hong Kong and the future AI Research and Development Institute. On the point about DeepSeek, we welcome domestic and overseas enterprises, including DeepSeek, to establish presence in Hong Kong. Hong Kong Guy has incorporated some DeepSeek technologies. The reporter just now asked about the Hetao area. As mentioned, Hetao is crucial to the development of Hong Kong and our country. Hetao is the engine of the high-quality development of Hong Kong and is also the origin of high-quality development as well as new productive forces of our country. The reporter asked about making breakthroughs. The Hong Kong Park of the Hetao zone as well as the Shenzhen Park of the zone occupies less than 4 kilometers squared of area. We have two different sets of laws and regulations in Hong Kong and the mainland. For the one river, two park scheme, there will be a number of challenges. So in the future, we should work on the harmonization of laws and regulations between the two places. We have to be bold in making reforms. We have to think about how to leverage our advantages under one country, two systems to make good use of the Hetao zone. In this regard, the SAR government will do its best. On infrastructure development, we are also trying to remove barriers and restrictions to speed up the development. On the right-hand side, the gentleman over there. I'm from Mingpao. I have a question about the financial services in Hong Kong for Mr. He. For the technology enterprise channel, mainland enterprises before listing in Hong Kong, they may approach the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. How many mainland enterprises, especially tech enterprises, do you think this channel can attract to Hong Kong? On reforms, When will you be able to put forward some new proposals in relation to, for example, the board lot system? Are you thinking of some new policies in terms of reforming the listing regime? On bond issuance, will you continue to make use of bond issuance to refinance debt, or will you work towards reducing the debt? On the tech enterprise channel, the goal is to provide convenience to applicants. There is a consultation and inquiry mechanism currently for applicants. We want to enhance this mechanism so that there could be a one-on-one support for enterprises, for enterprises that have questions about, for example, our listing regime. This is a communication channel for enterprises to learn more about the local regime so that they can do better when they prepare for their listing applications. We want to provide convenience to applicants so that they don't have to deal with any issues that arise after they've submitted the applications. Also, it will allow us to, in a more focused manner, facilitate the processing of applications. We issued a statement after the announcement of Policy Address 2024. And the measure that we announced was to make the processing time for approving listing applications less than 40 business days. Now we're enhancing it and shortening it to less than 30 business days. And that measure is complementary to this channel. You mentioned about reforms and the directions that we're going to take. We have to focus on both quantity and quality. For example, we want to speed up trading and transactions. We also want to enhance efficiency in terms of settlement. That's why a lot of chapters in the budget are dedicated to this. For example, we're talking about the T+1 settlement cycle, as well as the post-trade system. We are also reviewing the board lot system. The ultimate goal is that we want to focus on both quantity and quality, and at the same time, as we want to reinforce our status as an international financial center. Your third question is about bond issuance, right? When can we stop issuing bonds, and do we have a timetable in terms of issuing bonds? On the medium-range forecast, that is up to year 2029 to 2030, we have an estimation of how many bonds we have to issue. Currently, bond issues account for less than 17% of our GDP. Compared to the other places, our debt-to-GDP ratio is rather low. Also, we issue bonds only to get proceeds to support our public works or capital works as well as infrastructure development. The proceeds will not be used to fund recurrent or day-to-day expenses. On one hand, well, we will focus on the public works and capital works as well as the development of the northern metropolis by issuing bonds. At the same time, we have to ensure a steady health performance and a good financial position.
All right, let's take an English question.
Hi. Hello, this is from SMP, and my question is about the INT development. Okay, the government have started using its own AI tool powered by DeepSeek data learning model. Will there be any risk of government data being transferred to DeepSeek? And how do the government protect its data from being leaked out? Okay, and also, does the government have any plans of using AI to streamline its operations to cope with the rising deficit? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. You just talk about our own developed LLM, the large language model by Hong Kong guy. Okay. Yes, this model incorporates the basic infrastructure developed by DeepSeek, as well as our very, very good data handling system developed by the center together. Okay. So I can tell you one important news I just got this morning. Okay. So this model was just tested by a local company regarding to the safety. Based on their testing results, in terms of the safety, this model ranked #1 in the world so far. I just received the report. Okay. This report was just submitted to the DPO this morning. Okay. And I believe in the suitable time, they will make announcement. Hong Kong government has attached so high importance to the security of our system if we decide to roll out for the public use. In the past 1 year and a half, government has urged the Indo-Hong Kong Center, in addition to develop the new model, we must put a lot of effort to maintain the security. So I can tell you, in terms of the safety test, our Hong Kong guy model is pretty good. Okay. Your second question is about the Oh, right. Okay, yeah, that's a very, very good question. Actually, since 1 year before, government has already planned to adopt many AI solutions in many government services. For example, for our 1823 telephone service, okay? Because of the use of the AI technology, we can use the limited manpower to handle so many telephone requests every day. And we also have a lot of other government services used by the AI. I can have some data here, and let me see. So in some medical system, we already use AI assistant technology to improve the examination results. In some engineering project, okay, the government already use AI testing system to verify the quality of engineering project and so on. Okay, I believe in the future we will have chance to use more AI technology in government services, such as to improve our governing efficiency. Okay, also meets our challenge of manpower shortage. Okay, yeah.
好，下一條問題。
Next question.
Thank you. I have questions for both secretaries. So firstly, I want to consult Professor Sun Dong. It's also about the Hong Kong AI Research and Development Institute. Could you elaborate more about the function of this institute, and also maybe comparison with the institute's function with the Generative AI Research and Development Center? So what are the differences between the institute, the two institutes? And also, are there more details about how the 1 billion Hong Kong dollar funding will be used to support the establishment of these Hong Kong AI Research and Development Institute? And also some questions for Secretary Christopher Hui. So there have been some expectations, whether the city can further lower the stock stamp duties to boost the market sentiment. And we haven't seen any such lowering. So do you have any comments on this? And also, how will the T+1 settlement cycle help assist the city's, the Hong Kong's stock transactions in the future? And regarding the technology enterprises channel, maybe could you tell us more about how will this be different from the Chapter 18C rules? What are the differences? And also, any comments about the city's current debt level and any plans to reduce the debts in the future? Thank you.
Maybe we'll have Professor Chang to answer first.
So regarding your first question about the establishment of AI R&D Institute, okay. So the purpose is to spearhead and support Hong Kong's innovative R&D, okay, as well as industrial application of AI. So I'm happy to see that this year budget has set aside 1 billion Hong Kong dollar for the establishment of the Hong Kong AI Research and Development Institute. As you know, in many cities in mainland China, several AI research institutes already established several years ago. Okay. So the digital policy address will formulate the establishment arrangement for the institute and the specific goals. So the institute will focus on facilitating upstream R&D, midstream and downstream transformation of R&D outcomes, and expanding application scenarios. So in terms of the goal and the scale, this R&D, AI R&D Institute is different from the current Hong Kong Center, Hong Kong Guy. And the institute, AI Institute, will be established based on existing Hong Kong Guy Inno Center. So as I said just now, in the future, we will gradually integrate the Inno Hong Kong Center, Hong Kong Guy, into the newly established AI Research Institute. Okay. For the 1 billion budget, I believe later on the digital policy address will provide the detail to the logical and get approved later on. Thank you.
Mr. He, please.
There are a few questions, so I'll try to address them one by one. First of all, in terms of the relationship between trading volume and stamp duty, I would say that trading in the stocks are driven by multiple factors. If you set things in context in terms of the overall cost for people to participate in our market in terms of trading stocks, if you compare our market with those of others, in fact, we already don't have like capital gain tax, dividend tax, or others. So in that regard, I would say a very linear relationship between stamp duty and trading volume, I think, is yet to be fully established. Because after all, as I said, trading in stock market is driven by multiple factors. That's number one. And number two, in terms of your second question about the relationship between our proposed technical readiness for T+1 and its relationship with the overall market efficiency, it is a global trend, really, in terms of increasing capital deployment efficiency and to allow capital to be returned to the investors sooner in such a way that they can utilize it further. So as you know, right now we have a T+2 settlement, but globally the trend is really to shorten that. And that's why it's set out in the budget speech that we will have the system ready by this year end with a view to facilitating its adoption eventually, if agreed to. And the third element you highlighted is regarding the specialist arrangement that we have to allow pre-discussion or early guidance to be given to the tech companies before they seek listing. I would say what we are now proposing is an enhanced version and a more tailor-made version, taking into account the specific needs of various tech companies. Because as you can imagine, many of these tech companies, they come from different shapes and forms, but the rules are consistent for everybody in this sector. So how specific rules are to be adopted and to be interpreted for different companies, I would say that would need certain guidance and also interpretation. And that's why with this adoption of this specialized communication channel, it will allow the potential issuers to have early guidance from the exchange and also from the regulator in terms of how the different rules are being applicable to their specific case in such a way that the eventual time needed to have their applications processed will be shortened. So after all, in this context, it's a means to facilitate listing application and also to allow many of these tech companies to have better user experience, so to speak, when they try to get listed in Hong Kong.
唔該，下一條右手邊前面第二行嗰位。
The second row at the front, the reporter in white. I'm from TVB. I have some questions for Professor Sun. I'd like to ask about the $2 scheme. It will take effect after 1.5 years. Will the government help adjust the back-end system to speed up the implementation of the revised $2 scheme? The back-end system has to do with other organizations, for example, the Octopus Company. I believe the relevant enterprises or companies are working on that now. I believe the relevant government departments will explore this with the relevant enterprises. I'm afraid I won't be able to give a reply here. However, I do want to say one thing. We use AI and different types of technologies in Hong Kong. It is mostly the enterprises that have been using AI, and the mainland has been doing very well in this regard. The government has been giving guidance and instructions to create a good atmosphere and vibes for applying AI. As to whether Hong Kong is capable of transforming itself to promote a wider use of AI, well, we have to build an ecosystem in Hong Kong, and the SAR government will work with different sectors to promote this. And different sectors will play a more important role in this in the future. The reporter over there in orange, I'm from the Hong Kong Commercial Daily. I have a question for Mr. He on the building a virtual asset ecosystem. The government is going to promulgate the second policy statement. Which kind of financial services or financial tools will be incorporated into the VA system? And when will the trading of virtual assets be allowed? Some say that there will be a flagship forum. And what are the considerations behind hosting this forum this year? I will address the first question first. On the roadmap about fixed asset as well as currency market, there will be a forum. There are a few crucial segments in this value chain. The first is stock and shares. Second, fixed asset or fixed interest products. And third, FIC, that is fixed assets as well as fixed income assets as well as currency. And the third part is commodities. So we have covered EFFIC in our budget. For E, we have a dedicated channel to provide convenience for tech enterprises to list in Hong Kong. For FIC, that's fixed income assets, there will be a forum dedicated to that. And for commodities, we will develop our gold market. So we have made plans to build the entire value chain that covers different sectors and industries so that we can have a more holistic or comprehensive development as an international financial center to serve different needs of different investors and enterprises. Just now you mentioned about virtual asset. On top of EFFIC, we have to explore how we can continue to promote innovation and breakthroughs. In February this year, Consensus held a Web3 forum in Hong Kong. Over 330 relevant events and activities will be held in Hong Kong. As a Web3 or virtual asset market, we have slowly got the recognition globally. Moving forward, with an ever-changing international market as well as a volatile market, we want to build a regulatory system with certainties so that virtual asset agencies that can meet our regulatory requirements can come to Hong Kong to expand their businesses. This is one direction that we're going to take as we promulgate the second policy statement on the development of virtual assets. The reporter at the back in grey, I'm from Oriental Daily. I have some questions for Mr. Christopher Ho. Some reporter asked about the issuance of bond. Modi gave a negative rating to Hong Kong recently. And S&P also believes that the level of debt in Hong Kong will continue to rise, which affects Hong Kong's rating. Will the SAR government take the initiative to explain to these international organizations about the economic and financial situation in Hong Kong? Also, has the FSTB thought about this? If the rating of Hong Kong continues to drop, there might be a knock-on effect. Many investors, they look at the international rating when deciding whether to purchase the bonds issued. Also, for the worst-case scenario, if the bonds cannot be sold, will there be a backup financing plan? For example, will you set up a new company? To introduce or bring in new shares?
Well, as I mentioned, we set out the bond issuance scale in the budget that covers the coming 5 years. We have close liaison with the relevant companies. We have regular communication with them. We keep them updated on our economic situation as well as the wealth management philosophy and logic. We keep them posted. In relation to the level, this is controllable. Compared with other economies, our bond issuance accounts for less than 17% of our GDP, and this is very manageable. In relation to what the money would be used for, basically, it is used to support public works projects as well as infrastructure works. It won't be used to fund day-to-day projects. We are on the same page. For the amount of bond issuance, if it exceeds the original amount, then we'll have to seek approval from the Legislative Council. We cannot make our own decisions, so we are subject to regulation. From this perspective, these are the principles we abide by in relation to bond issuance. Regarding our bond issuance plans, we have regard to the local market conditions and situation before we make a decision. Thank you. The one at the back, the gentleman in white. Thank you. I'm from Tai Kung Pao. I have 2 questions for Mr. Hui. On bond issuance, in relation to the scale of bond in the coming 5 years, about $159 billion. According to the government's plan, we saw an increase of about 50%. The depth of the Hong Kong bond market, is it sufficient to absorb all these Hong Kong bonds? If the market is not deep enough, will you probably consider the USD, euros, or even Japanese yen, that is other currencies? The bond issuance market in Hong Kong, we don't follow the yield curve plus the spread. So do you have any holistic consideration or plan in relation to offshore renminbi government bond futures? It seems we don't have a timetable right now. Is there any reason why we don't have a timetable? Is there any new updates on your communication with the mainland? Do you have any more information on the issuance of renminbi bonds? Do you have any plan regarding the yield curve of renminbi bond? What is the longest it will get? Thank you. Let's take a look at the current bond plan. It covers a wide range of currencies, which covers the USD, euros, or even renminbi. So basically, we have been working with different currencies. In relation to the concrete arrangements, we'll have regard to the actual market situations at that time. But we are confident that they will be able to be absorbed by the market. In relation to long-term insurance companies, they want to have long-term Hong Kong bonds in the market. So, as a long-term investment tool, we make them in line with the public works projects. That's exactly why we are confident that the market can absorb these bonds. Regarding the offshore renminbi center or the government future bonds, we have liaison with the mainland authorities. When the time is right, we will launch the offshore mainland government bond futures. On the right, in the second row, the reporter in yellow. Good afternoon, I'm from cable TV. There will be Asia Pacific R&D Institute. How will it differ from the 1 billion AI R&D Institute? Will there be any duplication of the functions of these two institutes? Is that a question for me? All right, thank you. This morning in Sabah Port, there was an event, International Asia Pacific R&D Institute. It has collaboration with Hong Kong. It is a community scientific organization. It has close ties with the United Nations. This institute looks forward to ongoing connection with Hong Kong. It is different from AI R&D Institute that we're going to build. All right. Next reporter, please. I'm from Mengpao. I'd like to ask Professor Sun. There's the GMP, Good Manufacturing Practice. For tertiary educational institutions, what are the major difficulties they run into? What do they lack? How do they solve these problems, and how are you going to help these institutions in relation to R&D? I'd like to ask Mr. Christopher Hui in relation to the FSTB on improving efficiency. 2% more will be reduced. The overall growth in the operating expenditure still registers a positive growth. Aside from education, the growth ranges from 2.4% and 9.8%. Can you tell us why, despite the reduction, the growth is still positive in the end? Is that a structural fiscal problem for the government? The other question is also for Mr. Christopher Hui. Now, there are two major accounts, operating account and capital account. For the operating account, you need to maintain fiscal balance. But what about the capital account? How are you going to observe fiscal discipline? Or will you incorporate flexibility in relation to a capital account, say, for example, bond issuance? So you will have to keep issuing bonds in order to cover your debt. Do you have any internal assessment in relation to the interest rate to keep it in check? Professor Sun, thank you. Thank you for your questions. Apart from AI, we also have life and health technology. That is another industry in Hong Kong. A number of universities, the R&D heads as well as the senior management had meetings with us. We discussed how to enhance the structures in relation to life and health technology. Regarding good manufacturing practices, or GMP for short, this is an important life and health technology guideline. We have molecular R&D center. We also have set up a research center with CUHK. These two platforms provide 10 facilities, but then their capacity is limited. They can only support phase 1 or phase 2 clinical trials. Apart from Science Park, for genetic therapies, we can see a sharp increase in such therapies, and in the loop area there is great room for development. Many research are at the stage of clinical trials in order to attract mainland and overseas enterprises to come to Hong Kong for commercialization as well as R&D. Hong Kong indeed needs quality assurance facilities. DFS has set aside $10 billion for life and health technology. In Science Park, we have built a quality assurance facility that is up to standard. Enterprises can commercialize their R&D outcomes, and then they will become products. Science Park is still looking into the situation. They will look into GMP and see how much fund they need. They will also see the operating mode that will be required. They will conduct a detailed consultancy study, and we hope to compile a report within this year.
Mr. Hui, in year 2025 and 26, the operating expenditure is about $630 billion. It's not that we're going to deduct this amount by 1 or 2%. There are statutory requirements that we have to follow. For example, we have to pay for the pension of our staff. So for the 1 or 2%, it is equivalent to about $400 billion. So we aren't talking about $600 billion, but $400 billion instead. You mentioned about the two accounts, the operating account as well as the capital account. How should we view these two accounts? As mentioned by the Financial Secretary, the capital account has to do with our public works projects as well as infrastructure development. In the end, we will have to look at the two accounts together. By 2029 to 2030, we will have a surplus. This is partly because in our operating account, we will have a surplus as well. So it seems like we are adopting a different logic or perspective when we look at the two accounts. But at the end of the day, we'll have to look at the consolidated account. On handling the capital account, how can we make sure that our fiscal position is sound and how we can contain expenditure growth? We set priorities to different projects. We come up with cost estimates and we see whether there is room to compress costs. So there is a set of established procedures we adopt as we monitor the account. It depends, however, on when this established mechanism kicks in, and after all, we'll have to make sure that public funds are spent effectively. We'll take questions from the last reporter. I'm from Economic Journal. I want to ask about the AI Research and Development Institute. Can Professor Sun tell us the role of this institute? What kind of responsibilities will it shoulder? You mentioned that you will consolidate resources. What are the AI-related resources we have in Hong Kong? And what are the potential resources we have? You mentioned that it will help promote a wider adoption of AI. How do you imagine the future AI industry will look like in Hong Kong? Some said that to train an AI model, you need a lot of data, and you need a huge market for that. Do you think that there are certain restrictions or limitations we're facing in Hong Kong in this regard? Thank you for your questions. You asked about the AI Research and Development Institute. Apart from promoting AI, the institute will conduct researches. In the future, AI will serve an important role. We have to make sure that Hong Kong will be at its forefront in this regard. There are AI R&D institutes in many places in the mainland. There is one recently set up in Shenzhen. We hope that we can lead the sector in this regard. There is a supercomputing center in the cyberport. It will provide supercomputing support for this new institute. There is also an AI subsidy scheme. This is because we want to improve the AI ecosystem in Hong Kong. The Cyberport, the Hong Kong Science and Technology Corporation, they have over 800 AI enterprises in their parks, and the number will continue to grow. In terms of the application of AI, promoting industrial development, this future AI institute will play an important role. There's another important mission for this institute, that is to coordinate, develop, and manage. We have the HA we have developed our own large language model. We've also asked Inno Hong Kong to come up with a guidance on using AI technology. I believe this guidance will be published, guidelines will be published soon. We will set clear requirements for the institute in terms of their obligations and responsibilities. This will not only apply to the server developers, but also the users. This is the end of the press conference. Thank you.
Testing, testing. 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 Testing, testing. Let me sound. Testing, testing.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the second post-budget press conference. We have with us Dr. Choi Yuk-lin, Secretary for Education, and Mr. Chris Sun, Secretary for Labour and Welfare, Ms. Alice Lau, Permanent Secretary for Labour and Welfare, and Ms. Michelle Lee, Permanent Secretary for Education. The two officials will first speak, and then they will take questions from the floor. Perhaps you can all take a photo now first.
如果前面 photo 影完可以望一望後面嗰啲。
And now the cameras at the back, it's their turn. All done. Now, Dr. Troy first.
Members of the public and the media, good afternoon. I will now highlight some of the key measures on education policy as set out in the 2025-26 budget. Education is the key to nurturing talents. The government attaches great importance to education. Despite our physical conditions, we remain committed to education. We strive to further promote quality development in education and build Hong Kong into an international hub for high-caliber talents. For the 2025-26 fiscal year, the recurrent spending on education will be $102.9 billion, accounting for 17.5% of the total government recurrent expenditure. Education is a significant part of overall government spending. To enhance and upgrade the quality of education, we will implement a number of measures. In support of post-secondary and vocational training, we will launch a new round of research matching grant scheme of $1.5 billion. We will increase the quota of the Hong Kong PhD Fellowship Scheme to 400 places a year. We will set up a Hong Kong Future Talents Scholarship Scheme for advanced studies, and we will develop Hong Kong into an international hub for post-secondary education and build the Study in Hong Kong brand. In support of the self-financing institutions, we will introduce an amendment bill on the Post-Secondary Colleges Ordinance Chapter 320 to the Legislative Council to further enhance the governance and competitiveness of the institutions. Meanwhile, we will gradually raise the enrollment ceiling for mainland students at self-financing post-secondary institutions to 40%. We will launch a new round of the land grant scheme and the startup loan scheme so as to support capacity expansion and quality enhancement of self-financing institutions. To enhance teaching quality, the Education Bureau will continue to promote national education, national security education, and patriotic education. Funds will be set aside under the Language Fund to set up 2 allowances in training students to speak English and Putonghua effectively. The pilot scheme on other languages in junior secondary education funded by the Quality Education Fund will offer junior secondary students opportunities to learn other languages. We will also launch the AI for Science Education Funding Program to promote the use of AI-assisted teaching and pedagogical innovations in relation to junior secondary science subject. To improve the physical and mental health of students, teaching staff, and parents, the Education Bureau has been vigorously promoting the 4Rs Mental Health Charter since the 2024-25 school year. We will continue to implement the 3-tier school-based emergency mechanism to strengthen support for students at risk of suicide. Regarding special education, we will replace the personal care worker grant with the personal care enhancement grant for boarders to allow special schools greater flexibility in providing personal care services to boarders. In light of the government's financial position in the coming year, the Education Bureau, as a part of the Hong Kong community, will, under the premise of not affecting the quality of education and teaching staff, consolidate educational resources and streamline processes to enhance efficiency. In the next 3 years, in line with the target of reducing recurrent expenditure by 2%, the government will provide funding of $68.1 billion to the UGC-funded universities. We believe that the universities will use the precious public resources effectively to ensure quality of teaching and research. Meanwhile, we will seize the opportunity rising from our country's development into a leading nation in education and strive to build Hong Kong into an international hub for post-secondary education. To optimize resource allocation, we will adjust the general grant for publicly funded schools and kindergartens, combine certain subsidies, and adjust their disbursement arrangements. A dedicated task force will be set up to explore the reform and consolidation of various school grants with innovative thinking. For instance, we may consider providing a lump sum grant and allow schools to allocate resources more flexibly according to their development needs and priorities. Under the government's productivity enhancement program, the Education Bureau achieved a 1% cut in our recurrent expenditure in the 2024-25 fiscal year, amounting to about $1 billion. The saving we will be saving Well, all the saving was fully absorbed internally without any cut in funding to schools, subvented organizations, including UGC-funded universities, or subsidies for students and parents. In the 2025-26 fiscal year, the Education Bureau will cut spending by 2% under the Productivity Enhancement Program. We're going to save $4 billion in total. That is, overall, we're going to save $6.2 billion in terms of spending. We'll ride out the storm together with the wider community. Given the government strategy on targeted poverty alleviation and the current fiscal conditions, we will discontinue the non-means tested annual grant of $2,500 for students so that we can focus our resources on helping those in need. For students who require financial assistance, we will continue to provide them with a safety net and assistance through various means-tested schemes, such as the Kindergarten and Child Care Center Fee Remission Scheme, grant for school-related expenses for kindergarten students, the Student Travel Subsidy Scheme, the Subsidy Scheme for Internet Access Charges, School-Based After-School Learning and Support Program, and Free Lunch at School. All these schemes are to make sure that no students will be denied equal access to quality education due to a lack of means. In the coming year, we will continue to reform and innovate. We will consolidate and make the most of our education resources to enhance teaching efficacy. We will make plans from a holistic and long-term perspective to speed up our educational development. Leveraging our unique advantage of one country, two systems, we will nurture our younger generation into all-rounded, patriotic, and lifelong learners who are ready to embrace future challenges and opportunities. Thank you.
Friends of the media, members of the public, good afternoon. There's much mention in the budget on labor and welfare and manpower, but today I would like to highlight a few key important points of great interest to the public. First of all, the $2 scheme, enhancement of the scheme. Here there are a few points. Yesterday, the Financial Secretary has already mentioned them. First of all, the target beneficiaries remain unchanged. In other words, the eligible age remains 60 years old or above. And then we have made enhancement on two aspects. First of all, we will limit the number of concessionary trips per month to 240. So let's say there are 30 days in a month, so on average, each day there are 8 trips, 8 concessionary trips. But of course, you can take more than 8 trips per day, but then as long as you don't take more than 240 trips per month, then it's fine. And then there will be another arrangement, the $2 flat free come 80% discount arrangement. That is, if the fare is below $10, we'll still pay $2. If the fare is more than $10, then you need only pay 20% of the fare. Here there's an example. Let's say the fare is $20, and when we start the $2 flat rate come 80% discount scheme, then that means $20 times 20%. So that means you pay $4. So by 2027 to 28, we expect to save close to $700 million, or to be more exact, about $680 million. Now, in the past few days, there's been much interest expressed in relation to the implementation date. For the $2 flat rate come 80% discount scheme, it will be implemented no later than September 2026. Many ask why we expected to take 18 months to start the scheme. Let me explain that. Now, for the autobus system, if we have to change it from $2 to 20% of the fare, then we're talking about some 70,000 autobus machines in the MTR stations, on buses, red minibus, green minibus, ferries, kaitos, residence coaches, and so on. So there are such octopus machines everywhere. And we need to make sure all these 70,000 plus octopus readers work accurately. Then there must not be any mistake. And then they can only, make adjustment to the octopus readers after the end of the day. Now, when we lower the eligible 60, it also took us 2 months to make the adjustment. Now, if we want to work faster, we will manage to do it within 18 months, but we want to work even faster. Now we're in discussion with the Octopus Company, but we're not just talking about the Octopus Company, we're talking about all the public transport operators. So that's why we will need a bit more time for more detailed assessments to see how we can speed things up further. But today, I'm not able to give you a certain answer. So that's why we say no later than September 2026. Perhaps after discussion with the Octopus Company and all the public transport operators, and after on-site assessment, then we may be able to speed things up further. And then we'll inform the public of the implementation date. As for the cap on concessionary trips, it's not been done before. We do not know how long it takes for us to adjust the system. So that's why we are not able to give a concrete date, but we'll work as fast as we could. Please, we would like your understanding. You are all familiar with the Octopus system. There are various features on the system. We need to make sure that the changes are accurately reflected in every single Octopus reader. So this is one clarification I'd like to make. And then the budget mentions 10 specified schemes, including the new capital investment entrance scheme. And in fact, starting from 11 a.m. yesterday, we have levied the new fees. That is, if you make an application, you must first pay an application fee of $600. You can pay online, whether your application is successful or not. And then when a visa is issued, then upon the collection of visa, there is need to pay a visa fee. Before we charge $230, starting from 11 p.m. yesterday, for short-term visa, that means under 180 days, then the visa fee is $600. For longer-term visa, by that we mean the period is 180 days or more, then the visa fee is $1,300 per head. That means maybe there's a principal applicant, and if the applicant has a spouse, then that means there are 2 persons, so it's the times 2. If they bring in 2 children, so it's times 4. It's very easy to do the calculation. And people are worried that this may affect the attractiveness of our talent admission scheme. I can tell you it won't, because if you look at the fees in the UK and Australia, they are much higher. And then in the neighboring countries, for example, Singapore, the fees are also much higher. So we believe, therefore, if we increase the fees moderately, it will not affect the appeal of these admission schemes. That's the second point. The third measure. Now, the FS has offered an extra half-month allowance of standard CSSA payments, OH allowance, OH living allowance, or disability allowance. And also there will be similar arrangements for working family allowance. Now, some 1.71 million Social Security recipients will benefit, and then another 56,000 households receiving WFA will benefit. So the expenditure is about $3.1 billion. And then under the latest productivity enhancement program, the cumulative reduction in recurrence expenditure is 7% by 2027 to 28. So for social welfare organizations receiving lump sum grants from the Social Welfare Department, they have to work together with us to tide over this difficult time. Now, we've already sent out letters to invite all subvented organizations to a briefing on the 3rd of March, that's next Monday, so we can explain to them what we need to do to achieve the required savings. Now, the Labour and Welfare Bureau will try our best, but then, of course, with this productivity enhancement program, there's need for some serious reduction in spending. So we can't really absorb all the savings on our own. And so that's why we have to consider various means such as deregulation and so on, or cutting red tapes to enhance efficiency. So that may eventually allow more latitude for welfare organizations to carry out their work. So that's all of my way of my briefing. Thank you. The floor is now open to questions. If you wish to ask questions, please first identify the media outlet you represent, and please limit yourself to 3 questions. On the second row, the lady. I'm from Wenwei Pao. A question for Dr. Choi. Now, there's going to be the discontinuation of the $2,500 student grant. It seems that the Education Bureau has never disclosed this intention to schools. So, was there insufficient communication? You said you set up the task force in April. So what will the task force do in terms of communication with schools? And then you're going to relax the quota for mainland students to 40%. Now, in fact, the 8 UGC-funded institutions haven't reached the quota now. So, so is it possible that the institutions will not be able to use up all the quota? And so how do you allocate resources accordingly? First question on the $2,500 grant. When the financial secretary prepared his budget, he would talk to different sectors. The Education Bureau has discussion with lawmakers and stakeholders through various channels on budget measures, and then there are other exchanges in written form and in exchanges as well. But then we will not disclose any of the budget initiatives to individual legislators and others. And of course now we are facing fiscal constraints, so we all need to work together to overcome the challenge. Now we're going to set up a task force in April. In a moment, the Permanent Secretary could explain the operation and the time frame for this task force. Now, we are now giving various grants to schools. In our communication with the school sector, they've asked for more flexibility in the use of resources. So while we try to make savings, then we enhance the efficiency of the use of the resources by allowing more flexibility. And then there are 6 self-financing institutions. They will be able to enroll up to 40% of non-local students. So this is a gradual relaxation of the cap. Right now, for these self-financing institutions, they're able to enroll 10 to 20% of mainland students. And even if we raise the cap to 40%, they won't use up all the quota in the next school year, because it takes time for them to recruit teaching staff and provide the various facilities. Different institutions may have different progress. As for the 8 UGC-funded institutions, if we relax the cap, then could there be overlap of resources? But then actually they have different target groups, so we're just offering more choices. Now, we can see that there is strong demand for admission to either the self-financing or the UGC-funded institutions. So if we relax the quota, we believe it will eventually be put to good use. Thank you.
Permanent Secretary, in April, we're going to set up the dedicated task force. Is comprised of directorate officers in the Education Bureau who will consult the trade on various allowances, subsidies. We'll look into the amount of these allowances and subsidies. Our goal is to relax barriers and streamline procedures to make sure that the application process is more flexible and so that schools don't have to prepare a separate financial reports for all of the allowances and subsidies and to allow the schools to use the allowances in different subjects. We will complete our work within this fiscal year. Next question. Over the right in the last row, the person in the second last seat. Good afternoon, I'm from Singtao. I have a question for Dr. Choi regarding the clawing back of $4 billion from the reserves of the 8 public universities, that is the General and Development Reserve Fund. Will you continue to bring back funding from the public universities? And a lot of parents say that the discontinue of the 2,500 annual grants will pose great burden to them, especially for the middle-class families. How are you going to help families who don't or who are not eligible for CSSA? Thank you. Regarding the UGC-funded universities returning the $4 billion of reserve to the government, the university's reserve comprised of different categories. The $4 billion come from the General and Development Reserve Fund. That is the fund that we allocate to them. Now they have a balance of $1.1 billion. They don't have to return the $4 billion to us in one go. The $4 billion account for 1/3 of the $1.1 billion of balance in the reserve fund. We will continue to talk to the UG-funded universities on the return arrangement. After the return, the UGC-funded universities still have a 4-month, still have a balance that is good for 4 months operation. We understand the concern from the parents. The 2,500 annual grant was implemented in 2019. That was during the COVID. Back then, the fiscal position of the government was better. That's why we gave out $19.1 billion of relief measures, and this 2,500 grant was one of them. We distribute this grant indiscriminately and is a non-means tested subsidy. Each and every student from kindergarten to secondary 6 are given this 2,500 annual grant. Now, in the coming few years, the government is facing challenge in its fiscal position. So I think that it's time now for us to review the various resources that we have. We want to use them in a more targeted manner, especially with the government strategy on targeted poverty alleviation. We think that we need to focus our resources on families and students that are in need. For students with financial difficulties, we have various assistance schemes. In the kindergarten, we have a fee remission scheme. We have school-related expenses for kindergarten students. We have travel subsidy scheme, textbook assistance scheme, subsidy scheme for internet access charges, free lunch at school. And the UGC also offer a tuition subsidy scheme and a grant loan scheme and some non-means tested loan scheme. We have various assistance to different students. As mentioned, our dedicated task force will review comprehensively our schemes so that the schools can make use of them more flexibly. For families who face financial difficulties all of a sudden, we hope that their schoolwork will not be affected. Next.
最後排
The last row, the reporter in the middle. I'm from TMHK. First, a question for Dr. Choi on the $2,500 grant. Now, if you remove this student grant, how much can you save in a year? And what percentage is it of the total recurrent spending of the Education Bureau? Now, if you talk to the talk to the sector and the legislature, and if there's objection, then is there room for making changes to this policy? And then for and the second question is for the Secretary for Labour and Welfare, the $2 fare scheme. Now, if in future transport fare is increased, is there room to make changes to the concessionary scheme? Because otherwise the elderly may have to pay more for the trips. And does this policy go against the policy of promoting silver hair economy? Now, there are no new measures for carers in the budget this year. What is the reason? Is it because there are financial constraints, or are there other reasons? First, Dr. Choi. On the $2,500 student grant, we're going to remove it. We believe we could save about $2 billion. So that's 2% of the $100 billion of recurrent expenditure of the Education Bureau. As I said, we have to save a total of $6.2 billion under the Productivity Enhancement Program. Now, of course, the salary spending on teachers account for a large portion of expenditure, and that does not come under the $6.2 billion of savings. And of course, in schools, there are various teaching and learning activities, and then for NCS and new arrival students and so on, we need to give them support. So even when we have a tight budget, we want to keep up such support. That's why, having considered all aspects, we have decided to make this arrangement. Of course, different legislators may have different views on streamlining our administrative processes and so on. We will seek the views of legislators. Then on the individual measures and the implementation details, we'll of course listen to the views of lawmakers, but then we have to look at our own circumstances before we can make any adjustment. Dr. Chris Sun, thank you for your questions. You have asked 3 questions. I'll ask the Permanent Secretary to give you more information on the question about carers. Your first question, now after we have the $2 scheme discount every now, there is a fare adjustment regularly, so we also adjust the session. Well, after we introduced the $2 scheme, we have not changed the concession for many years, even though transport fare was revised many times. And now we are setting a $2 flat rate plus an 80% discount for fare more than $10. We hope that means we could encourage the elderly to go out, and the scheme is financially sustainable. So if we we offer 80% discount for fare above $80, about $10, then that means the elderly and persons with disabilities will pay 20% of fare above $10, and that government will pay the rest as subsidy, and then we can keep the scheme going. Now, fare below $10, about 60% of all the routes have a fare of $10 or less. Number of beneficiaries, about 3/4 of the beneficiaries take trips with a fare below $10. Therefore, we believe we're still able to keep to the original policy intention of the scheme. And you say instead of $2 now it's 20% of the fare. Does it go against the intention of encouraging the elderly to go out, and is against the intention of developing the silver economy? Well, I don't see any contradiction there. Now, in future, of course, the elderly will have to pay a bit more to take trips. That is a fact. But then we can look at it a different way. Even though the trip will cost a bit more, at the same time, government subsidy is still substantial. Now, let's say in future, say an elderly will have to pay $4 for a $20 trip, and then and that means we have to pay $16. So it's still a lot. I know $1 more is $1 more for the elderly, but then at the same time we must make sure the scheme is financially sustainable. So we try to strike a balance, and we believe we have done that. With this balance, we're able to keep to the policy intention of the measure. At the same time, we don't see any impact on promoting the silver economy. So we need to be pragmatic. We just need to find a way out. The Permanent Secretary, please. Thank you. On carers. Is a relatively new social welfare service area. We have launched various pilot schemes, and starting from 2023, we have already regularized a number of the resources. So some of the schemes are now standing schemes. In particular, for carriers with the financial needs, they can collect cash subsidies, and so this is now a standing arrangement. That's why there is no need to mention it specifically in the budget each year. So you can rest assured. And then for new services for carriers, these are now in a pilot stage. For example, the dedicated carriers hotline 182-183, that's now in operation. We have also launched an information platform for carriers. So we would like to take stock of experience in the past year or two, and we'll see whether there is room for improvement or adjustment. And we are taking up this task now. And then we also mentioned at the beginning, when we launched the scheme, is for 3 years. That means community support for carers. We have a publicity and education scheme that will last 3 years. The scheme was introduced about a year ago. We are seeing the effectiveness of the scheme. Hopefully, with good use of resources, we can let the public know better the needs of carers. And then we could provide better support to carers at the community level. And to the right, the one with short hair in blue. Yes, I'm Ming Pao, the $2,500 grant, Dr. Choi. There are, yes, I think you said you had communication with some lawmakers with education background, although you did not mention the specific measure. So which lawmakers did you approach? Now, on cutting the subsidy or the grant or whatever, what are their views? And then with primary and secondary schools, what is the spending on national security education in the past year and in the coming year? And now a question for Dr. Sun, the $2 scheme. In 2024-25, the $2 scheme cost $40.39 billion. Is substantial shortfall from the estimated $6.1 billion. So, and then we always say that the scheme is not financially sustainable. And here we're talking about the scheme costing from $4 billion to $6 billion, so that gives the impression that the scheme is not sustainable. But if you look at the actual expenditure, is it really true that the scheme is not sustainable? Do we really need to make this adjustment? And then for welfare organizations, will you be increasing the reduction in grants to NGOs, and for NGOs with receiving less than $50 million, will they not be spared anymore? Dr. Choi. Now, in the budget for any education policies, we will talk to different parties and sectors of the Legislative Council and also stakeholders in the education sector. And in the course of communication, we tell them specifically that the SAO government is facing fiscal constraints, so there may be need to cut spending. And if that's the case, what sort of spending would you want us to keep the most? So we won't actually consult them on specific measures because this is not allowed. And at the same time, we don't even know about it, especially during the consultation period. And then we keep an open mind when we conduct a consultation. We know certain spending has to be cut, and so we could all see through this financial challenge. But then we asked, we consulted various parties what items must not be cut. For example, Mr. Chi Kok-keung expressed particular concern about early childhood education. Now, on reducing expenditure in operating expenditure envelope, last year already we achieved a saving of 1%. In addition to the 1%, we've also saved an additional $1.5 billion. This all comes from savings internally. We have not cut any funding or grants to schools, teachers, students, parents. But this year, after a comprehensive review of the spending of the entire government, and under the Productivity Enhancement Program, we will have to cut spending by 2% each year. So on top of that, the Education Bill will have to save another $4 billion in education spending. So that's why we need to face a reduction of some $6 billion. So after we talk to the stakeholders and the different parties in the legislature, we try to find out from them what are items that they want to keep the most, and then on that basis we see what we can do, and if then we'll see what kind of savings we can make. Thank you.
Dr. Sun, I'm sorry, the speaker is off microphone. What about national security education? I will ask the Permanent Secretary to take the question. National education and national security education is part of our so they are integrated into the regular business of the schools. Dr. Sun, please. Thank you. Your first question on the original estimates for 2024-25, and it was estimated that $6 billion had to be spent, and now the revised estimate is $4.4 billion. You ask why there's such a difference. when we try to come up with the estimates, we base that on the previous expenditure pattern, and we have to also make an estimate on the possible fare adjustment to various public transport. Previously, the Joy U card was not registered under a real name, so the estimates was not as accurate. We have to base our estimates on some fake figures. That's why we come up with the $6 billion number. Now we have revised the estimate to $4.4 billion for 2025-26. The estimate is $5.4 billion. That's because after August last year, we have a Joy U card under real name registration, and we have already some concrete figures on the usage. Say $2.5 million are benefiting from the scheme, and we assume that all of them use the card. But we found out that only 88% of them actually use the Joy U card. So for various reasons, some 12% of elderly citizens don't really use the Joy U card, and that's why we made the relevant adjustment. For people aged between 60 to 64, 95% of them use the Joy U card. For people aged over 65, 84% of them use the Joy U card. So for the people with disability, all of them use the card. We look at the average. Say for people aged between 60 to 64, they take 1.4 trips per day. For people aged over 65, they take about 1 trip per day. For people with disability, they take around 1.3 trips per day. So we do have some concrete figures that allow us to make a more accurate estimates. Just now you asked this. After lowering the, after revising the scheme, can the scheme become financially viable or sustainable? Well, we have an aging population, and the fares for public transport will also change. So when we look at the long-term sustainability of the scheme, we need to keep to the policy intention of it, and we have to make it sustainable. That's why we said that we want to strike a balance among various factors. There is only 2 changes. 1, 2 flat rate come 80% discount, and a cap on the number of concessionary fare to 240 trips per month. From August last year to November 2024, there are only 360 people who took more than 240 trips per month. We're talking about 2 million people who are using the scheme. So only 1 in 10,000 people who use more than 200 or take more than 240 trips per month. So for the majority of the people, that is 99.99% of elderly and people or people with disability, they will not be affected. They can take the trips as usual. Let me give you some figures. For people aged over 60, the person who take the most trip take 14.2 trips per day. For people aged between 60 to 64, the person who took the most trips took 20 trips per day. For people with disability, 25 trips per day. I think that we need to set a limit somewhere. We already placed a limit on the concessionary fare to 240 trips per day. We think that that's very lenient, and that will not affect the commute of the people with disabilities. Your second question on the effect of the productivity enhancement program on social welfare organizations. We have invited the 170 subvented organizations for a meeting on the lump sum grant. The financial secretary ask us to reduce the expenditure on a rate of 1,357%. As I mentioned, we try to help these organizations as far as possible. But given our expenditure cut, we will talk to the organizations. Apart from productivity enhancement program, we will see how we can use some innovative ideas to enhance productivity and make the best use of the resources that we have at hand. Next question. Over the right, the lady in glasses, please. Good afternoon. I'm from Now TV. I have a question for Dr. Sun. You just talked about the $2 scheme and you said that the threshold is very lenient. Is there room for further restriction? Because you mentioned that not all elderly people use the scheme. I also have a question for Dr. Choi. The UGC-funded university have to return $4 billion to the government. What is their reaction? Would it affect some of their projects? Because some universities are establishing medical schools. Would it affect the progress of it? Mr. Sun, I will ask the permanent secretary to talk about how we come up with the new proposal. We will try to be as lenient as possible. If we lower the number of concessionary trips allowed, then we think that the elderly people would be worried about the number of trips that they take. In the future, we are going to adjust the system to allow the people to check how many concessionary trips they have left in their balance. But as for the implementation details, I will ask the permanent secretary to elaborate. Thank you. As mentioned by the secretary, when we look at the limit, we know that the $2 scheme target the elderly people and the people with disability. We want to encourage them to engage in the community and go out more often. We don't want regular users to have this mental burden after the implementation of the scheme. This is one of our considerations. But at the same time, apart from ensuring the financial sustainability of the scheme, there is a clear consensus in the community that this $2 scheme is funded by public money, and people are of the view that this should not be a bottomless scheme. After the real name registration for Joy U card, the number of people who use the $2 scheme too often are not that many. We try to strike a balance. As for the considerations that we have taken into account before determining on the limit of 240 trips, say for example, if the spouse of an elderly person lives in a residential care home, they may have to visit them for 2 times a day. They may have to deliver food to them. Sometimes they may not be able to reach the hospital or care homes by a single trip. They sometimes have to take a bus and then change for a minibus. So when they visit their spouse for one time, they need to take 4 trips back and forth. If they deliver a lunch and a meal for dinner to their spouse, then they have to take 8 trips in a day. We don't think that this is not reasonable. Another scenario is grandparents taking care of their grandchild. After taking the grandchild to school and going for grocery shopping, they have to go back home, and so 4 trips in the morning and taking the grandchild back from school to home. Another 4 trips. If you use 8 trips per day, then you may reach the limit of 240 trips per month. For people who take trips that are more expensive, we have another enhancement measure, that is $2 flat rate come 80% discount. For the trips that cost more than $10, elderly people and people with disabilities just have to pay a little bit more. The government is forking out 80% of the fare. So combining the two measures, we want to enhance the financial sustainability of the scheme while keeping to the policy intention of the scheme. For people with disabilities and elderly, they will not need to shoulder a heavy burden, and we think that the scheme is clearer and more in line with the current usage of the scheme. That's what we considered when we determined the 240 trips.
On the clawback of $4 billion from the 8 UGC-funded institutions, they express understanding about this, and they are prepared to share in the commitment to make savings. They believe this is relatively mild measure vis-a-vis their financial position. Now, we are facing immense fiscal challenges. Still, for the next triennium, the funding will be $68.1 billion, and that's already taken into account of the 2% reduction in spending each year. Yes, there may be reduction in funding, but still there is a steady financial support that will bode well for the long-term development of the institutions. Now, if the institutions are planning major projects or new development, as I mentioned, there are 3 parts in the reserve. Now, there is a general and development reserve fund. There are also various matching grants reserve. And then there's also reserve from donations or non-UGC funds. So in the medium to long term, if universities have major development projects, they could make use of such resources. So we're keeping close communication with the UGC-funded institutions because we want to develop post-secondary education so we can become an international hub for post-secondary education. So while we face fiscal challenges, we must not overlook the importance of development. We also need to seize upon opportunities available. So therefore, we have considered all these factors carefully in deciding on the clawback and reduction in funding.
Morning Post. First, some parents are unhappy about the axing of the 2,500 grant. What are the reasons behind the scrapping of the subsidy? Second, education is the only policy area that see a cut in recurrent expenditure. Is it unfair to the stakeholders? Apart from the 2,500 grant and the cut in university funding, what other areas will be affected? Thank you.
So for the 2,500 grant, as I have mentioned so many times in this conference, it is after we consult and talk to the different stakeholders and considering the priority and the nature of this grant. So this is the final decision we choose to move this grant from our budget. And for cutting the rest 2% expenditure, I think we have a task force to look at all the grants we allocate to school. And we are expecting the task force will start at quarter to start their work maybe April, and we will have some suggestions come out later.
Next,
last 2 questions. The last row, the gentleman in red. I'm from the Economic Times. A question for Dr. Choi about asking for clawback of $4 billion from universities. And then UGC will give $68.1 billion in funding to the 8 institutions. Well, from the paper of the UGC published yesterday, most of the growth has to do with the supplementary provision. So you ask for a clawback, and then there will be reduction of 2% in funding every year. Now you want to build Hong Kong, the study in Hong Kong brand, and then you want to develop Hong Kong into an international hub for post-secondary education. So does it go against that these policy intentions? And then school grants. If you cut school grants, will it affect the reserve of some schools? Because right now, if there are unspent grants, they may not need to return that to the government. So if you're going to cut school grants, what sort of grants are you cutting? Will certain grants definitely be kept? And then a question for Mr. Chris Sun on the $2 scheme. Now you say there could be savings of $680 million. But then what about the administrative costs involved in making the adjustment? Because we want to know whether the administrative costs will be higher than the savings made. Dr. Choi, about the $4 billion clawback or the 2% reduction in spending in funding. And then there may also be supplementary provision for the $68.1 billion. Well, yes, we've considered all these factors fully. Now we want to turn Hong Kong into an international hub for post-secondary education. Apart from funding, we have to consider the research and teaching capacity of universities, their knowledge, their experience, their reputation, and so on. So we're talking about the consolidated strengths being enhanced. Of course, we will also pay close attention to the development of universities under the current circumstances. And then through the UGC, we will organize for universities to join hands in promoting the study in Hong Kong brand. Also, international expo and conferences will be held to bring more talents and students to Hong Kong. So we're talking about combination package. We don't just rely solely on funding for building Hong Kong into an international hub. As for school grants to junior and secondary schools, as I mentioned, there will be a task force to review all the grants and allowances. We do not have stand at this point as to what grants or allowances may be changed. Well, but then there are salaries grants for teachers in primary schools and kindergartens. There's a rule that they must make up 60%. So under any schemes to cut grants, certainly the salaries and for teachers will not be affected. We'll go by the, say, civil service pay, rather. If there is a freeze of pay for civil servants, then for teachers of relative grades, their pay will also follow the same arrangement. You mean affecting the reserve of schools? Now, as I mentioned, there are different types of grants and allowances, and for each grant, there is a special envelope for that, and whatever is unspent is kept in that envelope. And so that's why the reserve comes under these different envelopes. And each envelope is envelope. What is left in envelope A cannot be used for envelope B. So that means there is no flexibility for the use of resources by school. That's why the task force wants to see if fundings could be used for different purposes. Maybe they have exhausted the funds in one envelope, there's money left in another envelope, they can still flexibly use the unspent amount, and then it won't affect any of the teaching activities.
Secretary Sun, thank you for your question. You are concerned about the administrative cost for the adjustment of the $2 scheme. Inevitably, administrative costs will be involved, but I cannot give you a concrete figure just yet, because we need to do the calculations with the Octopus company. This is an important measure under the budget. The company was just made aware of the adjustment very recently, and there are a lot of public transport companies. We try to minimize the administrative cost, but I can say definitely that the administrative cost will be lower than the money that we can save, that is $680 million. Starting from 2026-27, if we can only implement the scheme by September, in 3 years' time, we think that we'll be able to save $2.64 billion. This is substantially higher than the administrative fees because the administrative cost is one-off only, and we are able to save money every year. So I think that is worth spending, but we'll try to minimize the administrative cost. Last question, the gentleman in the last row.
TMHK. So first of all, for Mr. Sun, regarding the changes to the $2 scheme, are you concerned that this may affect the intention of getting the entity out? So set aside the technical difficulties that you mentioned, is there any chance the government might further revise the changes after taking the general public's reactions into consideration? And also, and secondly, you said the Bureau will schedule a meeting with the NGOs on Monday regarding the possible funding cuts. Can you give a rough estimate of how many NGOs in total that receive government support will be affected by the spending cut, and what amounts of funding will be cut? And for Ms. Choi, I would like to ask about why is now a right timing to scrap the 2,500 student grants, and how you would address the difficulties for underprivileged students and parents, and can you also detail which groups of people in the education sector have been consulted beforehand? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. The two changes now we going to make to the $2 schemes, of course, are made after a very thorough discussion internally. And we believe we have struck a right balance between, first of all, to preserve as far as possible the very reasons of introducing a $2 concession fare scheme, which is to encourage our elderly and the disabled to go out and to see for themselves the beauty of the outside world, and also to remain socially connected. And secondly, to make sure the concession fare scheme will be physically sustainable into the future. So this is a decision that we have reached after a very, very careful discussion internally. We're going to implement it. As I said earlier, we aim to put in place what we call a $2 and 20% discount, the latest by September 2026. We are not yet in a position to give you a very exact timing about imposing a monthly cap of 240 trips, but we'll try our very best to implement these two changes. On the efficiency drive, we're going to meet the 170 odd NGOs next Monday, and then we will let them know what exactly we're going to work together to achieve the efficiency gains, and yet at the same time providing more flexibility to our NGOs. Right now, I'm not in a position to provide you with the detailed breakdown. We are working on that because we just have our envelope with us, so we're working on the exact number, but just ask you to be a bit patient. Wait until next Monday. All the numbers will be out. So thank you for your question.
Okay, for my part, for when to remove the 2,500 will be the right time. I think there's never be a good time to do that, but we're still considering the present financial situation. We have to make a decision, so that's why we announced this time. And for the your concern about the students with underprivileged or economic difficulties, as I mentioned just before, we have different student financial assistance scheme and also different resources from the working family financial assistance scheme. So we also are considering increase the flexibility of using the school different allowance or grants in the school to let the school to deploy when there's students have special needs after especially facing the economic difficulties.
好，今日嘅記者會到此為止，咁多謝晒各位。
The end of the press conference. Thank you.